A mall security guard accused a black shopper of not belonging and humiliated him in front of a crowd. What he didn't realize was that the man was a police captain, ready to expose the racism fueling the confrontation. What happened next stunned everyone watching. But let's start from the beginning. The bustling shopping mall was alive with the sounds of footsteps, cheerful chatter, and the faint melody of holiday music drifting from the speakers. Shoppers, arms laden with bags, moved purposefully from store to store, while children tugged at their parents, drawn to the glowing decorations and colorful displays. Amid the vibrant energy, Security Officer Chuck Harding made his rounds, his eyes scanning the crowd with a calculated intensity. Chuck, a stout man in his late 40s, with a weathered face and a reputation for asserting his authority unnecessarily, relished the sense of control his uniform brought him. As he turned a corner, his gaze landed on a black man browsing in an upscale electronics store. The man, tall and composed, exuded a quiet confidence as he examined the latest gadgets on display. His casual outfit, dark jeans, a crisp polo shirt, and polished shoes, contrasted sharply with Chuck's rigid, no-nonsense demeanor. To Chuck, however, the man's presence seemed suspicious. Straightening his belt and adjusting his badge, Chuck stepped into the store with purpose. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice firm as he planted himself in the man's path. "Can I see some ID? We've had complaints about loitering." The man turned slowly, meeting Chuck's gaze with a calm yet questioning expression. "Loitering?" he replied, his tone measured but firm. "I'm shopping." Chuck crossed his arms, his stance widening as he loomed closer. "Well, you look out of place. Let's not make this difficult." The man, Police Captain Darren Hayes, arched a brow, his composure unshaken. "Out of place?" he asked, his voice steady but sharp. "In what way?" Chuck's reply came in the form of an exaggerated smirk. "You know what I mean." Their exchange began to draw the attention of nearby shoppers, who slowed their pace to watch the brewing confrontation. Darren, sensing the tension, calmly pulled out his badge and held it up. "Captain Darren Hayes, Precinct 15, he said plainly. Chuck barely glanced at the badge before scoffing. "Could be fake. Doesn't change the fact that you're making people uncomfortable." The crowd thickened, murmurs growing louder. Phones emerged from pockets, cameras poised to capture the scene. Chuck, undeterred, dug in his heels. Darren, unbothered, held his ground as the atmosphere grew taut with suspense. Darren stood tall, his calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the growing tension in the electronics store. The crowd that had begun to gather buzzed with murmurs, their curiosity sparked by the escalating interaction. With a steady voice, Darren introduced himself fully, holding up his badge once more for all to see. "Captain Darren Hayes, 15th Precinct. I'm here on personal time, shopping for a gift for my nephew. There's no issue here, officer, and no law I'm violating." Chuck Harding's lips curled into a condescending smirk as he crossed his arms. "Doesn't matter who you are," he said, his voice loud and dripping with disdain. "This is my mall, and we play by my rules here." His posture screamed authority, though it lacked the respect or restraint fitting for the situation. His tone only served to agitate the growing crowd, many of whom now had their phones out, recording every word. Moments later, the mall manager, a petite woman in a sharp navy blazer, pushed her way through the onlookers. Her expression was a mix of concern and exasperation. "Chuck, what's going on here?" she asked, her tone suggesting she was already bracing for trouble. Chuck didn't even glance at her as he waved dismissively in her direction. "Nothing I can't handle. Just dealing with someone who doesn't belong here," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The manager's brow furrowed as she turned to Darren, clearly noting his professional bearing and the badge in his hand. "Sir, is there a misunderstanding here?" she asked, her tone apologetic. Darren remained composed but firm, addressing Chuck directly. "You've made a mistake," he said, his voice steady. "You can fix it now. Let's step aside and have a private conversation." Chuck scoffed loudly. "People like you don't scare me," he declared, his voice echoing through the store. Gasps rippled through the crowd, which now buzzed with outrage. Phones recorded, and whispers turned into louder protests. Amid the tension, two men in casual clothing moved closer to the scene. Off-duty police officers, they recognized Darren immediately. Stepping forward, one of them called out, "Captain Hayes, everything okay here?" Their presence added a new layer of intensity, signaling that the situation had taken a serious turn. One of the off-duty officers, a tall man with a weathered face and a calm demeanor, stepped forward, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. His badge, clipped to his belt, caught the light as he approached Chuck. "Chuck," he said firmly, his voice loud enough to carry, "do you even know who you're talking to? That's Captain Darren Hayes, the head of our precinct." Chuck turned to him, visibly annoyed, and waved him off. "I don't care who he says he is," he snapped. "This is my mall, and I'm just doing my job." The off-duty officer shook his head, disbelief etched on his face. "Your job is to keep this place safe, not to harass innocent people. You're way out of line." Darren, standing calm amidst the growing commotion, decided it was time to put the matter to rest. He reached into his wallet and pulled out his official identification, holding it up for everyone to see. The badge gleamed under the store's bright lights, and a collective murmur of recognition spread through the crowd. The color drained from Chuck's face as the realization hit him. His bravado faltered, and he stammered, I was just doing my job, following company policy." Darren's voice rang out, commanding the attention of everyone present. "This isn't about your job," he said, his tone steady but firm. "This is about how we treat one another. What you've done today isn't just an insult to me. It's a reflection of deeper problems in how we judge people based on appearances. That needs to change." The crowd fell silent, hanging on his every word. Mall management, clearly shaken by the scene, hurried over. The manager, wringing her hands, turned to Darren with an expression of profound regret. "Captain Hayes, on behalf of the mall, I deeply apologize for this incident. This is unacceptable." But Chuck, unwilling to admit fault, doubled down. "I was enforcing policy," he insisted, his voice rising. "If there's a problem, take it up with corporate." Darren gave him a long, measured look before turning back to the crowd. When excuses like that justify mistreatment, it's everyone's problem. His words, laden with quiet authority, carried a weight that left Chuck and the crowd in stunned silence. Darren calls his precinct. Within minutes, uniformed officers arrive. Chuck, panicking, tries to explain himself, but it's too late. Mall management, pressured by the unfolding scene and public outrage, announces Chuck's immediate suspension pending an investigation. The crowd cheers as Darren, composed, turns to the spectators. "This isn't just about what happened to me. It's about how we allow biases to dictate our behavior. We can and must do better." Chuck's humiliation is complete as he's escorted out, his attempts at protest drowned out by the murmurs and recording phones of the crowd. Meanwhile, Darren stays to address the public, urging for accountability and education to prevent such incidents in the future. As Darren leaves the mall, he's stopped by a young boy who says, "You're a hero." Darren smiles, ruffling the boy's hair. "We're all capable of being heroes, kid. Just stand up for what's right."